Great. We'll get started then. Web scraping with Microsoft Fabric is the short title. But we've got dogs right next door. I invited them to come in, but they're engaged with lots of people. My name is Scott Stauffer. Why do we have dogs here? Because up in the top right corner, that's my little girl Annie that I trained from 8 weeks old to 2 and a bit years because she's being considered as a breeding dog initially. I'm from Iteration Insights. I'm an analyst architect, an analyst architect, I guess is what their title is. There's my GitHub. The slides will be available on the website after this session. My GitHub will have sample files for you to play with. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best way to go. With that, let's get started. Oh, and additionally, please provide feedback. It gives you the opportunity to win prizes. I believe you have to be here to win at the end of the day. And you also have the opportunity, I believe they do make a donation with every submission that's made. You can choose the charity that money goes to. So when you have Microsoft Fabric, who's using Microsoft Fabric today? Dipping their toes in it, running it in production. Oh gosh, brave people. So when you're doing data ingestion in Fabric, you've got different options. And so it really is a great thing, but things aren't quite fully baked yet, and that's okay. We use what we can and we make do with what we can't. So, but these are the 4 options. If you're ingesting or working with data, data flows Gen 2, data pipelines, or data factory pipelines, PySpark notebooks, and well, if it's not going into the lake, you could still use Power BI, I guess, and make an all-in-one solution. But for our purposes, why am I not going to do web scraping with Data Factory? Well, in an article that you can link to here, Data Factory and Microsoft Fabric doesn't currently support the Web API or the Web Page Connector and data pipeline. So that is something that I cannot demonstrate or work with. So I've scaled it down to those 3. And initially it was the other way around, but because we're in a 20-minute session, I want to show the notebooks and make sure we see what the possibilities are there. We'll do some examples in Gen 2, and I'll highlight some of the limitations that you might run into. And the reason, for those reasons, you may choose to use PySpark notebooks or take a Power BI desktop file, publish it up to the service instead of even using the ingestion through the other means. So what is our destination? Well, our destination at this point, or our destination in terms of what we're hoping to produce, is we're going to be able to produce a report that'll have the locations of the International Guide Dog Federation's members that are all around the world, and build a report that can give us that information. And so it's pulling from this website. And in just a moment, we will pull that up. And we can go. So this is the actual page on the International Guide Dog Federations. And I've filtered it down to Europe for just the purposes of this PySpark notebook. And so I will be pulling in, and I suspect we could make this a little bit bigger. There we go. We want to pull in the name, the country, the website, and maybe the more information link. Because as you can see, down in the corner it says, well, maybe I'll choose an English one. Maybe I'll choose an English one. Dogs and assistant disability. Okay, here we go. So you can see that the link in the bottom, maybe you can't see it. Dogs and assistance for disabled people is the actual link that we want to grab because we want to be able to jump to and pull information from that website. So let's go over to our PySpark notebook. So down in the bottom corner here, you can see that it's got the data engineer persona, and that will light up certain things within Fabric. But what we're looking at right here is actually not what we want to be looking at. We want to actually, let's jump back to our workspace for a moment. And that's fine. We can actually, please navigate away before. I don't think I actually need to publish this. I can just, apologies. Let's get this published later. There we go. So let's look at the workspace for a moment. I've got a SQL Bits conference workspace, and you can see within this workspace I have different items. I have a data flow Gen 2, I have a report, a semantic layer was created upon publishing. So this is actually my data flows Gen 2. I actually want to go to my other workspace, so I'm just going to pop over to my other workspace here, and I just dropped it into my workspace. So we'll pull that up, and we can see here we've got web scraping as a notebook item. So we'll open up that. And with this notebook item, you'll see that we have an environment, and an environment is a new concept. So we can actually have a peek to see what our new environment has. We need to do this because we're using Python libraries. And when you use Python libraries, you need to add them to your environment. So let's just have a quick look at what that looks like, because that is critical to using Python. So there are some default libraries, but the libraries that we are using are not part of their default pack. So we're going to pull that up quickly. And we can see that we have, well, we were looking at doing some geocoding. So we have GeoPandas, we have GeoPy, we have HTTPX, and we have SelectorLax. And we're using the last two to do the web scraping. So let's jump over there. Actually, I'm just going to slide back over here in the show. And the show, there we are. Okay, so we're going to just quickly close this and head back over to our notebook. So in this notebook, who's familiar with notebooks? Who's used a notebook before? Oh, we've had quite a few. Okay, so maybe I won't dive too much into the fact that we've got markdown cells and actual code cells, but we're just going to actually, I ran this all a little earlier. Let's just run this here. We're just going to run this cell and just see how quickly that is. But let's, this is difficult. All right, so let's just do this. How's that for reading? That's probably kind of small. So let's make that a little bigger. We have, you can see here we're importing the HTTPX, and we're importing the HTML parser, and we're referencing the selectorlax.parser. Session started in 22 seconds. That's pretty quick. We've got two variables, the URL that we're actually going to be connecting to, and then we also have something for headers. That's giving Python the information about the browser that we're using. So I believe this also requires that you have because of course Azure doesn't have a browser in it, you need to use the gateway. So everyone's heard of the gateway, I'm sure. You need to connect the gateways because you need to use the gateway's browser, the machine that the gateway is installed on. So this is run in 22 seconds. If we run this a second time, it doesn't need to start, so it'll just run in 2 seconds or 1 second. There we go. And you can see the date and the time that was run, of course. But we're just doing some basic stuff here. We just want to, for this one, we'll just get our response code. Yeah, okay, response code is 200. That means everything is good. You can see the old stuff that is in here. We could have cleared the list, but we'll just rerun this and just see. Okay, so we are getting the page. So we just asked for the page in this code. We have to print response.text. So that's provided the page. And then let's look at some CSS selectors. Okay, so we talked in the last session about CSS selectors. We are asking for the CSS first. That's a function within HTML, or that's a, help me out here, Python people. Is that a function? A method within the function? Yeah, I'm getting a nod, so I'm going to go with that. And we're instructing it, we want the title, and produce that in text. And you see the answer was already there. It's pulling the guide dog providers in Europe, International Guide Dog Federation. So that's the title that was on that web page you saw earlier. And here we are, we're now having our CSS selector, and we're defining it here. And we're saying within the UL tag, we want to choose the UL tags that have list of providers, and we want the LI for that. So that's basically what this is saying, and it says print the members. So when we run this, you can see that it's defined that yes, it's got them. but it really hasn't, we haven't asked it to do too much with it. So in this part, we're actually asking it to give us the country, and you can see the input is hidden. Actually, we'll just jump to this section here. We'll run this. And show the output. Oh, you know what? I suspect not running these in order is going to be a problem. I'm just going to click on the run all. Okay, so it's running through them again for us. Here we are, running through. And you can see in the JSON that it pumps out, we have title. We have, there's the title, there's the website. We've got the country here, and you can see country is prefixed with the word country, so we'll need to do some transformation after we're finished, but that's of no consequence. And you can see that we've also grabbed the more information details as well. So let's just jump to the next section though. We've implemented some try-catch, and let's see what the results look like here. Show output. There we go. So the try-catch just deals with, well, what happens if an element isn't there? It won't error out on us. Now there we are. So let's. So in the end too, you can see here we have we've got what we've asked it for is the h3.title, and so the .title indicates it's the title class of the h3 tag, and we've asked for that in text. We've also grabbed the .country, which is again the country class, and we've grabbed the .website class that is an A attribute. So, so when we say it has an attribute, we then can define what attribute we're looking for. We're looking for the href attribute of the class website. So that produces exactly what we need. Now we could look into the we could go into Chrome and we can inspect, and we could see that yes, indeed, these are good good CSS selectors to get the data that we need, but we can also pump them in and do a trial and error to get in here. So if we thought, oh, what do we need? What are some of the other attributes? You could look into the website and see that maybe there's some other attributes you can grab, and you can pull those in as well. So this is the basics on how you might do it in Python. And then of course you would go and you would convert this to a CSV file, and then you load it in Data Lake. We don't have time to demonstrate that. I'm not sure what time we're at, but we've got 2 more things to demo. So we're just going to actually jump back to the slide deck real quick. And continue here. Excellent. And so, I did actually want to go back up to very quickly. I apologize. Let's just pop that back on the screen. And let's just go to the top of the document, Control Home. Okay, it's not going to do that within here. You know what? Control Home. It does not want to do that. Okay, here we go. Okay. Additionally, there's a web series called Web Scraping 101. This is where I took that information and worked it into this PySpark notebook and used my website, obviously, and was able to get things done with that. So the individual that does that does a number of different things. Sometimes you'll also want to use other methods depending on what type of code is generating your website. You might want to use the JavaScript methods, and that would be something else entirely. So we'll just end this for a moment here. And I demonstrated the fact that the public libraries we used, one thing to note too, it says across the top, environments are in preview. That to be said, you can see that I had four public libraries that I referenced. Somehow they all got deleted, but they weren't republished. So I'm not sure what happened there, but just something to be warned on that. And of course, those are the public libraries. And so web scraping Gen 2. So when I did the solution, I initially did it in Power BI, and I took and I created some functions so it would cycle through. It grabbed the first web page and it grabbed all the all the continents, and then the function then was called to the continents and inject that and find all the associations, all the affiliate or members of the guide dogs, and then it scraped those and then grabbed the link to the detail information of each of those. So a function to get the individual one, to get the addresses and the phone numbers and the email addresses, et cetera. So 2 functions were called, but Dataflows Gen 2 in Power BI does not actually support it. Dynamic data sets are not supported, you can see. And I thought I had heard this is not the case, so I started working on this, realizing, no, this is still the case. Miguel Escarbo from the Microsoft product team confirmed that. He's got a blog post on it. But what I did is I said, okay, well, what would it be if we didn't use the functions, if I hard-coded it? Indeed, I could have the Dataflow Gen 2 run, generate the data as you can see on the screen, and then drop it to a lakehouse. And so with the lakehouse that you saw earlier in the workspace, that was created, and then we had the Dataflow Gen 2 drop the data to that location. So we can see that in a few minutes, but that's the Dataflow Gen 2. And in the Dataflow Gen 2, you can see here, the destination is the lakehouse. So you define the lakehouse in the bottom right-hand corner. The rest of it looks like Power Query, doesn't it? I mean, it's Power Query in the web. On the left-hand side, we have the function stuff, the attributes that I copied and pasted from Power BI Desktop. And once we hard-coded it, we went in and changed it from a dynamic to a hard-coded. It did generate the stuff, the data that we needed from the page. So that's just grabbing Europe in our case, as I mentioned. And there's a copy of the code that I'm just going to make a touch bigger. This is, there we go. And it would be nice if Power Query did some nice formatting, but you're gonna just have to go there and do it yourself. Otherwise, it's just one long line. But we've got, you can see the affiliate organization, the country, the website, and more information. And that's the code that we're using within Power Query. So it looks much the same as what it looked like in Python in essence, using the same CSS connectors, or CSS selectors, I should say. So of course, then there is the Power BI report. So creating a report with Power BI Desktop. You can see the functions that I mentioned before. And then I've got one query called all IGDF members that calls that function. And you can see that in the Power Query code. The top selection in green there indicates the fact that I'm actually grabbing it from the website and referencing those CSS selectors, but then I'm invoking on the next 2 green areas. And I'm just going to make that a bit bigger so you can see that. Thank you. So, oops, okay, that didn't work well. So I think now we've looked at the 4 options. Obviously, Dataflows isn't going to work for us. If we're Python Spark people, we're comfortable. We've got the ability to mention in the environment section the libraries that we'll need to load. And then most of your Python stuff will just work from there. With Dataflows Gen 2, you're lacking in some of the functionality. The other things, if you have web pages that are lazy load. Anyone understand what lazy load is? Yeah. So lazy load is when you have a page load up and it really doesn't load the rest of the page until you scroll down on the scroll bar or use your cursor keys to go down the page, and then it'll sort of lazy load that page and load just what is needed, so it doesn't fill your page up with all the data initially. It only loads what it needs. So I had some resources from the, and it's not showing, so let me. I'd mentioned some important resources from the first leg of the trip before lunch. These are those. They're important, I think. If you're not familiar with CSS Selectors, there's a good video and blog post, as well as he provides a cheat sheet. Additionally, the W3 School is a really good resource as well for CSS and HTML. And then I've made reference to Selector Gadget, which again has works fine on some web pages, not so well on others. So you might just be better to open up your Chromium browser, right-click the area that you want to look at, and click on Inspect. And for the first one as well, I used the live server extension for VS Code so that we could look at the code on that. We have guide dogs just outside. I set up a fundraiser through Just Giving, which is an affiliate to BC Alberta Guide Dogs. And so if you're interested, feel free to scan the QR code, or you can tap outside if you want to give a donation to the guide dogs of the UK. And that's my little girl, Annie, on the screen there. So additionally, feedback, feel free to scan that QR code. You can get some prizes at the end of the day, as well as have the opportunity to make a contribution by simply filling out the feedback. SQL Bits provides a donation to that charity. All right, thank you. Any questions before we finish? I think we're past time, are we? Yeah, but any quick questions? No? All right, I'll be outside in the guide dogs if you want to chat further. Thank you so much.